Okay, in this video, I'm going to be talking about how brain circuits are used to create just like intelligence. Okay, so the first thing we have to get at is that that our brains are 3D and we navigate in a 3D environment. Now the thing is that when we do that, it's we have to have a world model in our heads because we have to know where we can go and where we can't go, and so that would be negative feedback. Because when we have perception, perception is simply it takes tidbits from the environment and then puts them all together, and then because we don't see everything that would normally be seen like in a picture or anything like that. We see like little spots like that all over the place, and we combine it into a model of the world. Now, what happens with thinking is that let's say that you're manufacturing a car. You have to, all the steps of a car is going through the assembly line, and then you put this on first, and then you put on that one second, and then you have to twist this bolt on to the other one. And so the thing is that when we think about intelligence, we're thinking about the ability to accomplish something. So for example, tying shoes. When a little kid is learning how to tie shoes, he makes lots of mistakes and he doesn't get the sequence right. But eventually, he or she finds out that they can tie their shoes if they first force it down, and then get the loops, and then put the loop inside the other loop, and then tie it, twist it. Now the thing is, that's exactly what the frontal lobe is doing. It's taking the contents of the mind, and it's taking the contents and rearranging it in such a way that it can actually be produced out there in the real world. And it does it in 3D. So the thing is, like, if I don't know, it's like there's a difference now between problem solving today and problem solving during the hunter-gatherer days, because back then you had to navigate and find the food, and so in order to find the food, you had to know about how the animals went in this direction or that direction. And so the thing is that, like, we have our hands to manipulate things. So when we tie our shoes, that's definitely part of the frontal lobe circuitry that allowed us to do that. And the reason we could do that was because we figured out what didn't work. We got negative feedback. So the thing is, like, if you're looking out into the real world and your brain is trying to recreate it, then the front of the brain is sending signals to the back of the brain, and when it sends those signals, they either match up or they don't. And so if they match up, then that means that you see something, and if it doesn't match up, it sends the back of the brain sends negative feedback to the front of the brain to saying this isn't working. And so I guess, like, the whole point is that this feedback where you know what doesn't work, and because you know what doesn't work, that when you find out what does work, it's a matter about probing. So you're probing the environment. You're going out into an area of land where you've never been before. You don't know what the animals are like over there, and you've come across like strange animals that, like, you don't know how they behave, and so you study them and you just look and see what they do. And so the thing is that, like, the feedback for the visual centers are more pronounced when you're a hunter-gatherer person, because you have to see everything at once. So the thing is that, like, when it's creating the 3D environment that you're navigating in, the front of the brain is like tying the shoes. So the reason your visual system works is because the front of the brain is putting it all together anyway. So it's putting it together so that you can see everything that's out there, and you can passively observe, like how the sparrow is singing its song, where you never seen a sparrow before, and so I guess the main point of that is that we have to navigate in a 3D reality, and we have to manipulate our thoughts so that we can better get in tune with the environment, so that we know that we can't do this and we know we can do that. And that's all from ever since we were babies. We were like, we would throw our hands around, and like didn't touch anything, and it's like that means that we aren't doing anything. And so it's it's um it's not exactly subjective, but what it is that we know what can and can't do because of our experience. Because like when we were little kids, we read books, and our parents read to us or something like that. And like now we read books that we don't need our parents to help us read those books, because we already know that through this sequence that the information we get is supposed to tell us, is supposed to go in our head, and when it's in our head, we integrate it into everything else. Okay, so after discussing that, we're talking about like how the brain actually does that. Um, now, first of all, like you have the entire environment that you are in currently in your mind, and you remember where you've been before. I remember walking down to the city hall, and I know where that is, so I can navigate to where the city hall is from my house. But and so the thing is that the world is being built inside your head, and then once the world is built up inside your head, it's a simple matter of what do I learn that's new. So if I come across, how do I integrate new stuff into my cognition, into my brain circuits? Because okay, I can see like my room, and that doesn't really trigger anything new in me. So the thing is that in order for the brain to learn, it has to reorganize itself so that it can store more information, right? So the thing is that like it's called reflection. You see, so the thing is that like two sides of the brain could go back and forth between each other, and then you could have four of those, and then you can have six of those, and then they're all sending signals in different directions, and those signals are looking for the negative feedback to just like get at the point where um, where you know how to manipulate things in the external world, but also you know how to manipulate things in the internal world. Now the thing is that I lack visual thinking. So like I close my eyes, I can't see anything, I can't create anything in my mind because I'm not a visual thinker. But what I do know is that that the circuits that go to the back of the brain create that feedback loop of imagination, and because it can do that, it's able to create things in reality. So like you think about like a little kid with Play-Doh, he imagines a dinosaur, and he molds the clay into a dinosaur. Me, I'm more reflective in the language areas. So when I come up with stuff linguistically, it can be referenced to things that I don't really know about. So the thing is that the mirroring part has has well, I'm not sure how the diagram of the brain is set up, how which circuits are more interconnected. It's more interconnected in the front than the back, because the back is more like feed forward, and then the front is all like integrated and feeds back into the back of the brain. And so and so so the circuits have to remember how to do something. So the circuits I guess that they just send whether it's correct or it's not correct, and for the circuit to reorganize. So the circuit is the way it is, and then something new comes up, and then the circuit has to integrate that, and so it integrates that by adding onto it, sort of like protein synthesis, where the ribosome adds amino acid off of the tape of the RNA, and then that creates a protein. So the thing is, like, that in our minds we are actually saying, okay, when we see something new, let's put that on top of the things that we already know. And so I said this before, that that's a sparse distribution hierarchy. So everything is being placed on top of each other, but it's being placed on top of each other in a sparse distributed way. So the new things are on top of the hierarchy, and so that means that once it has a repertoire of patterns, it can send those patterns, and this goes all by the unconscious. The way it goes by all the unconscious is that everything's happening. It's checking everything at the same time. If I look at this water bottle, my entire brain, I didn't need to think about it. It just appeared, and that's because the brain not calculates, but like it perceives things instantaneously, because all of the brain is activated at the same time when we're trying to recognize an object. And so once we you take your foundation of base reality, and it's all interconnected, and then you put on top of that the new stuff. So the brain reorganizes for the new stuff, and the new stuff tells you whether or not the feedback was positive or negative, whether you are getting at some place progressive or not. And what happens after in a baby, it's not very efficient, you know. So a baby sees something, it doesn't recognize it because it has not organized itself to recognize things in the environment. And so to recognize things in the environment, it needs a feedback to tell it, okay, this is next, then this. And so the baby's feedback mechanisms are highly blobby, you know, like gooey. It's like stuff goes in and it doesn't stick. It's not really as advanced as an adult brain. And so the thing is that the adult brain has added layers of things. So like this happens most regularly, then that, then that, then that. So it goes by what happens most often. And if something new happens, it means that it's a rare incident where this thing can be added to what can happen. And so I suppose that in order to build this in a computer, it would have to have negative feedback and it would have to build up layers of patterns so that its mind could be filled with enough patterns that it could be developmentally sound like a human being. I mean, like an adult.